Okay. All right. Thank you, Gila. So page 124 at the bottom of the page right here in this edition, the 13 Petalled Rose. So we've been speaking about the big idea of mitzvah, mitzvot in the plural tense, which, as we said, means not just a good deed. That doesn't mean a good deed. It means a connection. That's because each time we do a mitzvah, we're connecting to God. And there are multiple mitzvot that refer really to multiple types of connection. Some are day connections, where the day itself is a holy day, is a meeting place, so to speak, for God, like the holidays, like Shabbat, for example. And some are deeds, like keeping kosher, which was one of the mitzvot that we spoke about quite elaboratively on page, 122. The latest was really engaging into this idea that sexual relations are also a mitzvah in which we invite God. Of course, as long as they are in the right framework, in the right context, with the right person, then it is an invitation to God. We even said that it is a moment in which we can be the closest to God, because as we mentioned last class, there are three partners to every man: his father, his mother, and God himself. Without God, the creation of man can't take place. So we see that God is very much involved in sexual relationships. Now, because it's such a holy act, of course, it can invite great opposition. As we spoke about, that mystically, each time there is something great happening, there are always opposing forces trying to stop that holy thing from happening. But it just shows that it's a holy act. Maybe this is why it's such a defiled act in society today, because of these opposing forces that are turning it into such defilement. But the Jewish perspective on intimacy is really in perspective of tremendous holiness. That's really what we've been speaking about. Of course, we spoke about much more, but that's the gist of the idea. Let's continue. Bottom of page 124, as you just mentioned. Consequently, sexual relations outside the family. Does anyone want to read? Oh, sorry, outside the family, creating couple are forbidden. Anyone? Joyce, yeah, please go for it. 1 second, you're on mute, so I'm gonna.
Okay.
There you go. There you go, much better. Go for it.
Consequently, sexual relations outside the family creating couple are forbidden. The prohibitions on all other sexual relations are derived from the fact that, in essence, such relations do not bring about the level of wholeness or unity required of a human being. Although the command to be fruitful and multiply is only a part and not a necessary part of the intention and meaning of sexual life, it is a matter of principle that the sexual life should be based on relations whose essence comprises the possibility, at least, of procreation.
Right.
This principle, in turn, derives from the Jewish view of holiness as something that has such a living reality. It must be fertile, capable of growth and development, and the bearing of fruit. Similarly, anything that lacks this potential for procreation and growth, whatever has no relation at all to the creation of a new form, is close to the realm of corruption, death, and evil.
Right. So I want to develop this idea, which is very powerful, but it's an idea that is not just limited to the context of sexual relationships. It's limited to the essence. It's not limited to anything, because this idea speaks really of the essence of creation and the essence of life altogether. And that is that a connection, any type of connection that happens between two people, or that happens between me and an action, a deed, something else, must bear fruit. If it does not bear fruit, then in a way it's an evil action. That's how extreme this idea is. But the word evil is used by Rabbi Steinsaltz, and the word corruption, death, is also used. So I'm allowed to use it. Now, I want to elaborate and develop this idea a little bit so that it's as clear as possible. And that is that we are sent to this world to create fruits, to produce fruits, to produce sweetness. If I am living a selfish life just for myself without caring about producing fruits, then really I fall into this realm of evil. You know, just to put it in a different light, but I think I've mentioned this before, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, who, by the way, whose 120th birthday is coming up next week on Tuesday. But the late Lubavitcher Rebbe, as we all know, would give blessings to people each and every Sunday by welcoming them and giving them $1. And that dollar was supposed to go to charity. Now, most people kept that dollar because it had some sentimental value. It has maybe some holiness since the Rebbe touched it. So they would keep this dollar and give another $1 to charity. But $1 would end up going to charity because that was the instruction of the Rebbe, that when I meet you, I'm giving you $1 that goes to charity. Why did he insist on giving people dollars? What's so wrong about meeting people and giving them blessings without giving them $1 for charity? And as he would say, I think we've spoken about this, he would say, because there cannot be a situation in which two people meet and a third person doesn't benefit from it. That's how far he went. In other words, any type of connection that happens in this world has to bear fruits. In the words of Rabbi Steinsaltz himself, I once asked him, maybe I shared this also in the past, but it's engraved in my mind, and I think about this each and every day. But I asked him, what is the most important question of life? And he answered, Azma, and then what? And he explained himself. Many people engage in self-serving acts. But then what? And even in the realm of Judaism, we become bar bat mitzvah. What happens after that? Do we continue our relationship with Judaism? Or do we never come to synagogue again? You get married, and then what? Can you maintain that marriage? Can you ensure that it follows the best of paths? You get a diploma at the university, and then what? Can you continue studying thereafter? Or once you graduate, that's the end of your learning in life? And then what? What happens? Yom Kippur, we reach the highest spiritual realms. And then what? What happens the day after? The new year comes. You took upon yourself all these good resolutions. What happens the day after? And then what? The Azma. That's the essence of life. If nothing comes out from the connections that we create in life, then the connections are not connections. And they fall in the realm of corruption, death, and evil. As Rabbi Steinsaltz points out, this is true particularly in sexual intercourses. If I created this bond, this connection, and nothing happens, I'm not talking about children necessarily. Some people can't have children. Some people, but I'm talking about that I took this connection to a deeper level and I transformed this connection into some source of light so that I can take this bond that I created and create love and produce warmth for the world, then it was all worth it. Otherwise, if it was just self-oriented, then not only is it selfish, but again, it's in a way a complete waste of potential and therefore destructive. So I think this paragraph here is just revolutionary, maybe one of the most important paragraphs in this chapter, that every connection must have a fruit that it creates. If it does not have a fruit that it's created, then there's almost no point in the connection at all, or the connection wasn't really a connection. Azma is the question of life. Yes, I know there's some hands here. Linda, Diana, please, anyone.
Linda, go ahead. What? She's not on mute.
I want to tell you you're on mute. Yeah.
I'm not on. You can hear me, can't you?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, then I'll go first and she'll realize what she's doing here.
Okay.
Now, all through this discussion, I was waiting for the word love because love is such an important part of giving.
Right.
And I was just so happy when you brought it all together. I just
thank you. And it's interesting because I'll tell you this, the word for love in Hebrew, as the Talmud points out, has within it the word hav, which means to give. And that's exactly the idea.
But it is. That's what love is. You're giving.
Right. That's what love is giving. Right. And that's because, again, it creates a fruit, a gift. And if love doesn't create a gift, it's not love. Mm-hmm. And that connection falls in the realm of, again, corruption, death, and evil. Yes, Linda.
Well, corruption, death, and evil, what was coming up in me was that, we're not at the times when all the Bible was written when women could have babies when they were 80 and 90 years old. We're in a totally different world. And, the procreation years are maybe 25 or 30 or whatever. And there's, and I just found this to be somewhat harsh, the realm of corruption, death, and evil, because having sex can create such a beautiful connection with the person you're having it with, and it's about connection and growth, but without the procreation. And that was really, because he's not so harsh, and he chose such harsh words here.
Right.
And as a woman who could no longer procreate, I would like to think that if I were to be having sex, it was not going to be, looked at as something ungodly.
Right. No, and again, I don't think Rabbi Steinsaltz is only speaking about physical children. That type of
And his
procreation.
words, potential for procreation and growth. I mean, procreation is 100% making babies, but the rest is growth. I mean, so that was where I was just kind of like, ooh.
No, I understand. But I think we should expand that word to
Yeah.
fit not just making physical babies,
Right.
but also making spiritual babies, right?
Okay. I can have that one. Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course, procreating so that we impact the world, each in our own way. And maybe that's why he uses also the more poetic language of the bearing of fruit in the previous sentence, or capable of growth and development of the bearing of fruit, because it could be any type of fruit. We have to decide what fruit it is. Sometimes it's a very physical one, sometimes it's a spiritual one. But the most important, again, is that something comes out of it. And when two people meet, a third person has to benefit from it, as the Lubavitcher Rebbe would say. Otherwise, there's almost no point in that meeting. Yes, Joyce, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is touching me very deeply because I'm in the process right now of creating a new program for training. Okay. And the metaphor that I was using, because it's with a foreign country, but it's a metaphor of the roots, connection, and the tree, the branches, the leaves, the blossoms, and the fruit. And for them in their creation of what they're going to be doing, it's so that they can share the fruit with others. And this touched me because there's such an intense purpose, and it's challenging in the writing, but not in the spiritual intention.
Right.
So this is giving me a little bit more. I'm liking it because that's how I see it. The bearing of, that's exactly what I want, is them to bear the fruit, to be able to share.
Right. Beautiful. 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 Yeah. Very nice. I like the image of the tree. If we want to go to Kabbalah and find this idea, well, we find this idea in many, many places in Kabbalah, but also in the Hebrew letters. So it's fascinating to note, but Kabbalah points this out, the Zohar points this out, that if you look at every Hebrew letter, every single one of them, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, they all have some part of the letter. Each letter has some part of the letter that faces or that even reaches out forward, reaches out to the next letter. So if you look at Aleph, for example, you have the bottom of the Aleph, which is a little Yud upside down, that has a line going towards the Bet. The Bet, the letter of the Bet itself, has two lines again going to the next letter. Gimel has a leg reaching out to the next letter. Dalet also is a line facing forward. And again, each and every letter is pushing itself forward. Why? Because it is sharing the message that if we are Hebrew letters, or if every one of us really represents a different Hebrew letter, which is the idea of a Sefer Torah, a Torah scroll, includes all of our letters put together, and that's what makes a Torah complete and kosher. So if each and every one of us is a letter, some of us might be the Gimel, some of us must be the Yud, the Nun, whatever letter we might represent. But our letter is only complete if it pushes itself forward to reach out to someone else, again, to create that fruit. Otherwise, our letter itself is not complete. So that's the big idea, portrayed not as an image of a tree, which I love too, portrayed in the Hebrew letters themselves. Each and every letter, it's fascinating. You don't see that in the English alphabet or in any other alphabet. Each and every letter as this push from the inside to the outside. Let me go and create. Let me go and make an impact and have a third person benefit. Because otherwise we're not complete. That's the big idea. Asma, and then what? What's left from it? Yes, Gila, please.
Sorry. Yeah, I was going to ask something that relates to the Hebrew word, some Hebrew words that relate. So the word to love, lehov or ahava, you said inside of that is to give.
Right, have.
Have. Right. So I'm not familiar with that. I'm familiar with latex, which is probably in the more modern way.
Right.
What is the infinitive? Well, le'ehov, but have.
Right.
I'm not sure I understand.
Right. So it's interesting because you're right. No, I'm glad you caught that. Have is actually an Aramaic word, and the Talmud points out that in ahava we have have, which means to give in Aramaic. It's Hebrew and Aramaic put together.
Interesting.
But that's what the word is.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was confusing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is in Hebrew, to have sexual relations is most often referred to as l'kayem yachasim, which literally means to l'kayem, to fulfill a relationship.
Right.
So it's about relationship in Hebrew. Now, is that more contemporary or
it's more contemporary? So I'm glad you're in a way igniting a whole new thought, because you're right. L'kayem yachasim is the modern way of saying sexual intercourse. But in the Hebrew Bible, in the Torah itself, there are 4 expressions to sex. And these 4 expressions, I think, speak of 4 levels of connection. Of course, the 4th one being the highest and the one that is most in line with what we are speaking. So the first one is the expression of, and we find that when the wife of Potiphar tried to seduce Joseph, if you recall that biblical story, right? Joseph was a slave in her house and she was married already. But she tried to seduce him. She wanted to sleep with him, so she grabs him. But it fos bevigdo, that's what it says. Vatomer lo shichva imi, and she said to him, "Come and lie down with me. Shichva imi, sleep with me, but lie down with me." That's the first expression, and we'll get back to it. That's level number 1. Lie down with me. Level number 2 is an expression which we find in forbidden relationships, where God warns us not, God forbid, not to have any sexual intercourses with siblings or with parents and so on, or with uncles, aunts. And that expression is gilui erva, legalot erva, which means to expose nakedness. That's level number 2. We'll get back to that too. 3rd level, we find with Adam and Eve. When Adam had an intimate relationship with Eve and vice versa, to bear fruit for the next generation, right? To create a continuity for humankind. Then it says, Va'adam yada et chava ishto. Adam knew Eve's wife. So the word knowing, knowledge, is used. And that word also refers to sexual intercourse. So we'll get back to that 3rd level, to that 3rd expression. The 4th one is the highest level. And that's when Rivka and Yitzchak were engaging in sexual relationships, Rebecca and Isaac. And Avimelech, who was the governor of that place, he goes out to his porch and he peeks at through the window of Rebecca and Isaac, and he sees them engaging in relationships. And there it says that Isaac was laughing with his wife. So again, you have 4 different expressions for sexual intercourse in the Bible. The first one, lie down with me. The second one is exposing nakedness. The third one is knowledge. And the fourth one is laughing. Why these four expressions? I think it speaks of four different levels of connections. There's a connection in which we have a bodily connection. Lie down next to me, body to body. There's really no engagement there, no soulful bond. Just shichvaimi. You'll have your body right next to me. Lie down next to me. And that's not, of course, an ideal relationship. It's not a relationship at all that is sought, because it's physical, it's coarse, it's vulgar, and it has no purpose. The second level is exposed nakedness. Yeah, again, we have some type of revelation, deeper, therefore, connection. But what are we focusing on? On the nakedness of the person, the bodily nakedness. So it's not just lying down one next to each other where there's almost no connection, but here I'm trying to reveal something, but the only thing I'm trying to reveal is the nakedness, the physical nakedness of the person. And therefore that relationship is also seen in a negative eye. Then you have a third relationship, and that's where we begin to really have true connection. That relationship is when Adam knew Eve. Here I really seek to know you, to expose not just your physical nakedness, but also your spiritual, emotional nakedness. I want to know you. That's why they say intimacy is into me see. I want to see into you. I really want to know you. And that's an ideal relationship. Well, I'm not just connecting via the body, I'm connecting via the soul. I want to know your soul. I want my soul to know yours. And I want your soul to know me. Into me see. That is Adam and Eve. That's a beautiful relationship. But the ultimate one is one of laughter. What does that mean? What it means, so let me ask this question. What makes people laugh? What makes a joke funny? Does anyone know? What makes a joke funny? Why do I laugh at jokes?
The unexpected.
Thank you. The unexpected. Exactly. The punchline, right? I didn't expect this punchline. Oh, wow. It came out of the left field. I'm laughing. If you don't have a good punchline that came from the left field, then the joke is not funny. No laughter is created. And in a way, that's why this word is used as the fourth and ultimate type of relationship, of intimacy. Because in a way, the ultimate type of a relationship, of connection, is when I'm so connected to the person that connection itself is what counts. Whatever happens afterwards is a punchline for me. Life, I face as if I'm facing a joke that's creating all sorts of punchlines. All I care about, my anchor in life, is this relationship. As long as we have each other, everything else, even the negative parts of life, will be those punchlines that will make us laugh. That's the ultimate type of relationship. Rivka and Isaac faced a tough life, very hard life on many levels. They were persecuted many times, and then they couldn't have children for many years. But for them, as long as they had one another, as long as they were connected in such a way that their connection was truly infinite, then the hardships of life were punchlines. They laughed at everything. And that's the ultimate type of relationship. Now, in a way, I think it's connected to what Rabbi Steinsaltz is saying here. And that is that we have to seek relationships, either with ourselves, not just with others, but with ourselves, that are so deep, so powerful, that when we take those relationships and we bring them to the world, then we create laughter for the world. And the world creates laughter for us. And joy is produced. That's the fruit that we bear. And it's not an easy relationship. It's not an easy level to attain, but it's certainly something that we have to aim towards. So lekayem mechasim, just to go back to your question, Gila, you're right. It's not a biblical term.
Yeah.
But the biblical terms, I think, are so rich because they relate to really the way we should treat one another.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great.
Sure. Unfortunately, in our day and age, I mean, sex is seen as yet another, like someone was telling me the other day, I was shocked. He does sex because apparently, I mean, a youngster, and I don't blame him, and he'll grow up and he'll mature. But apparently, it's like running 3 marathons or something. I don't know. So 5 kilometers. It's like running, jogging. It's a type of exercise. So I run and I do sex. I felt sorry, really felt sorry. You're missing the whole point. You could be creating such an elevated type of relationship, such a bond, such a connection that is not only soulful, but because it's soulful, it's transformative. And you're relating to it as an animal relates to it. But that's the way we're that's the society we live in. That's why I don't blame you. That's how it's marketed. And here we have Rabbi Steinsaltz, who tells us that this is something so holy, and at the same time, it's something that has the potential to bear fruits that nothing else in life can bear. All right. Okay, let's continue. Unless, again, there's other comments, questions. All right, let's continue. 125, the restrictions on the exercise. Does anyone want to read?
I'll read, Rabbi.
Please, thank you. Thank you, Gila. Go for it.
The restrictions, excuse me, the restrictions on the exercise of sexuality are therefore intended mainly to confine it to the family-making unit, to the man-woman, masculine-feminine interaction, and to the wholeness and perfection resulting therefrom, and to the bringing forth of new life accordingly. For the same reason, eroticism is confined to its proper framework. When sexuality and eroticism spread wildly and the life force is expended without any real inner meaning, sex relations become an abysmal process of corruption in the sense that great divine powers are abused and wasted. The precepts of sexual purity, the regulations concerning sexual habits, and the times for sex within the family are intended to integrate this life cycle with the greater cycles of existence, and at the same time to use the power of sex in order to raise one up to a higher level.
Right. So if it's used not in the right framework, of course, it could be very dangerous, because in essence, sex has immense powers, immense divine powers that can really elevate this world altogether, as we mentioned. This reminds me, by the way, I don't know if I've shared with you, but the Talmud speaks of how the sages got together some 2,000 years ago, and they were asking the question of, whoa, what is the most destructive force in this world? And they reached the conclusion that the inclination for sex is probably the most destructive force in this world. It's what drives people crazy. So now with their powers, the sages were able to capture the angel of sex, so to speak, that provides this blessing of sex to the world, and to see if the world will become a better place, if they can engage him and not allow him to function. That's what they did. They captured the angel of sex, and they said to themselves, should we kill him? And we'll make the world better. If that is indeed the most destructive force in this world, maybe that's what we should do. So they said, no, we'll keep him for 3 days and let's see what happens to the world. They kept him for 3 days. And after 3 days, they got together and they realized, yes, the world is a better place. But unfortunately, they're also destroying the world because no future generation is being created. So they didn't know what to do. And then they decided to release him. And the world continues on and on because of this angel of sex. But what the Midrash is telling us here, it's a powerful one, because it tells us on the one hand, you have the destructive power of sex. If again, it loses its framework, if it's used in a, lie down with me on like the very first level of sex, and if it's used, of course, in a way that is purely physical and therefore destructive. But on the other hand, you have the procreation. You have what is most necessary to create the next generation. So you have those two sides of that angel. It's a double-edged sword, so to speak. But the halacha, Jewish law, what it tries to do is it tries to eliminate one edge of the sword so that we can focus only on the holy edge and really can ensure that it does what it's supposed to do. And it is not just to ensure procreation, but to ensure also healthy procreation that is as conducive to the world and to its continuity as possible. And that's where, again, it could be a very dangerous name. It could be a very holy thing. Depends on how we use it. And this is what this paragraph is saying here. I think it's true, by the way, with everything. Everything has a double side to it, right? There is no such thing as an evil characteristic per se in Judaism. In other religions, yes, they are, right? In Christianity, you have the 7 cardinal sins. Envy is one of them. Greed. Envy, greed, what are they? I'm sure many of you know what they are, but
Sloth.
what? Sorry,
Gluttony.
Yeah.
Sloth.
Who said what?
Sloth.
Oh, sloth. Thank you. Yes. Whatever. Now, in Judaism, there is no such. Envy could be a very good thing. Greed can be a very good thing. If I'm envious of a spiritual person, I become more spiritual. If I'm envious of a scholarly person, I become more scholarly. There's a great line in the Talmud that says, "Kinat sofrim tarbeh chokhmah," that the jealousy of scribes increases wisdom in the world. Why? Because they scribe, so they're going to create more scholarly work. So it's a good thing. So there is no such thing as a bad characteristic. Every characteristic, though, according to Judaism, has two sides to it. I can use envy for good. I can use envy for bad. And it's true for kindness. Even the ones that are considered to be very, very noble. If I'm kind to a cruel person, as the Talmud says, that one who is good to cruel people will become cruel to good people. המתחסד על אכזרים סופו להתאכזר על חסדים, or something like that, which means that one who is good to cruel people will eventually become cruel to good people, because kindness also has its framework. And if I'm kind when I'm supposed to be severe, I'm kind to a terrorist, then and I let him out, then he'll create more destruction in the world. So even kindness has its own framework, because every characteristic in Judaism has two sides to it. Now, those two sides are amplified with the strong elements of this world, like sexual intercourses. But it's true with everything else too. Sorry, Linda, I know you raised your hand. You wanted to say something.
Well, no, you know what you just said about kindness.
No.
Oh, not me.
Yeah, the other Linda, but go ahead, Linda. No,
all
the
right.
other Linda was muted. Now
okay.
you know. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Both Lindas, please.
No, let her talk. I'm good.
No, go, Linda.
When you talked about kindness to terrorists, like that's not kindness. That's I mean, that's wrong. I mean,
Yeah, right.
I hear what you're saying. The terrorists think they're kind, but the act in of itself is not a kind act. It's a horrid act.
Right.
You know,
right. It's a cowardly act, but you can excuse it as kindness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Linda, yeah, please. The other Linda.
What I was going to say earlier, you were talking about jealousy and envy. And I heard an interesting lecture about words. They are different. Envy and jealousy are different. Envy is when you want to emulate something. Jealousy is when you want it for yourself and not for the other person. So envy is the good side. Jealousy is the bad side.
Oh, good.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. And
right.
When she was making the point, the person who was speaking, she said that we often interchange these words and we shouldn't, because they're different.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. I wonder, like in the original list of the 7 cardinal sins that we speak about, does he use the word envy or does he use the word jealousy?
Envy.
I
think it's envy.
See,
right.
Probably should be jealousy.
Probably should be jealousy based on that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Because envy is what you said. Envy, it makes you want to be maybe often more like the person. And
right.
if that's good. And also I was thinking about that you said a kind act to a terrorist. And I was thinking that the problem with being kind to people who are not good people is that you get nothing back. And after a while, that good person who's being trying to be kind can be disillusioned about offering kindness, because they're never getting anything. There's no result.
Right.
And so after a while, I would think that they would maybe not try so hard to be kind to people because they don't see any benefit to it.
Right. No, beautiful. Maybe that's part of the logic of that line from the Talmud, that you'll eventually be cruel when you're supposed to be kind.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, yeah. There's a similar line in the Talmud, which actually is recited in the laws of family purity, which are, include also the laws of sex. But the line in the Talmud is that those who are close when they are supposed to be distant will be distant when they are supposed to be close. But whatever. But I'm saying that what the Talmud is saying with these lines is that there's a time and place for everything. Just like King Solomon says in Kohelet, in Ecclesiastes, chapter 2, that there's a place and time for everything under the heavens, tachat hashamayim. And, that's when we have to know how to channel those characteristics. And if we channel them in the wrong way, and same with sex, again, if it's used in the wrong way, this is the subject matter after all. If it's used in the wrong way, in the wrong place, in the wrong time, with the wrong person, then it can be very destructive. Yeah.
And selfish.
Yeah, that's right. That's when it turns very selfish too. Yeah.
Okay. On mute.
Diana, please.
The challenge that you're talking about, the trying to understand when difficult things are happening. I'm in a class right after this that's studying the history of Judaism and Jews.
I see.
Amazing professor. I'm going to give you his name, Stanley Mervis. And he's just really good. And we are discussing things that people do and how they see it. And that really affects what's happening. Like my brother was a POW. He was a Jewish POW in Germany, but they didn't know he was Jewish. Wow. His attitude, it's what he sees. And what he saw was that the Germans who were guarding what he was living in were in much better shape than he was, because they were not being fed well and they were not being treated well either by the, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot of levels.
Right.
It's either this or this. There's all kinds of levels in there that really affect what you do and how you see things and what you're willing to put up with.
That's right. That's right. No, very good. I didn't know your brother was a POW. Wow.
Oh yeah, he was. And my other brother was in the battle at Leyte Gulf. So I'm becoming a very popular old person in this class because even the teacher is young.
Yeah, I know you're popular, but who says you're old?
Yeah, I want you to meet him. I'm going to bring him to meet you sometime. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Good. In a way, I think, that's Aristotle has a good line that says that it's easy to fly into ecstasy, but how to fly into ecstasy, when to fly into ecstasy, why to fly into ecstasy, right? That's a much difficult task that not everyone can achieve. And it's true. I mean, it's easy to engage in sexual intercourse. It's easy to be kind. It's easy to be envious. But when, how, why, what, etc., that's much harder. But in a way, it's the task of life to know how to channel all these powers that we have, so that they are as conducive as could be.
It's not easy either.
Yeah.
To really be with it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, very good. Yeah.
Hey, Rabbi.
Yes, Heidi. Yes, please.
Isn't there a saying that discretion is the better part of valor?
Discretion is the better part of
Valor.
Of valor.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
That's
very
what
well
I
said.
think of when you're talking.
Right. No, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. I remember to connect this. I mean, I remember being escorting Rabbi Steinsaltz to a world scientific conference. I forget is anyone familiar with ASA? I think it's called Association of Scientists, something. Whatever. It's Nobel Prize winners and all these big professors They come together once a year to discuss the new revelations of science and so on. And Rabbi Steinsaltz was invited as one of the speakers. I think I mentioned this, was in San Diego. And in the middle of the day, even told me, okay, I can't take this anymore. Just take me to the zoo. And the San Diego Zoo has a panda that he wanted to see also. So we went to the zoo, and it was really a very elevating experience. But the content of his talk, I'll never forget, was how we live in a world that has a lot of information and very little intelligence. And that's why the world can be a very dangerous place to live in. What does this mean? So we have a lot of information, even on a small scale. Kids have access to Google, to Wikipedia, to all these sources of information. The problem is that they don't have the wisdom, the intelligence to know what to do with it and to even know how to handle it. Now, that could be dangerous, could be destructive. He was speaking of Iran, for example. Iran has all this accumulation of information on how to create nuclear bombs, but do they have the wisdom, the intelligence of how to use them, when to use them, if to use them at all? No, there's no wisdom there. And that's when the world can be a very dangerous place to live in. Now, I think this is connected to what we're saying. We might have a lot of information, a lot of accessible information, accessible characteristics even in life. But the big question is, do we have the wisdom to know how to use them? And we have to develop wisdom. And in a way, that's where science comes into place, not just to provide information. That's what he is trying to tell the scientists there. Your goal is not to provide new information, new revelations, new innovations to the world. That's important. But where science is failing, and I'm just trying to quote Rabbi Steinsaltz, and you may agree or disagree, but where science is failing is that they are not providing wisdom, the intelligence to know how to deal with it. And it turns this world, instead of a very innovative world, into a very dangerous world. So I think it's true on a grand scale, but it's true on a minor scale, on an individual scale. God gives us so much. Do we know how to use it? Do we have the wisdom to know how to apply that characteristic, that information? That's the big question. We have to know that, envy has its place, and kindness has its place, and every other characteristic has its place. But that's why we have the Torah, to provide a framework so that they become as effective as possible. It's true for sexual intercourse. It's true for every other act under the sun. When we have the GPS of the Torah, then at least we hope. And at some level, we know also that information is used with the wisdom of the Torah will become effective and productive and not destructive.